I'm Dick Miller, and I'm here with Senator Jeff Smith. And Jeff, it's nice to see you again. It's been a couple months, maybe.
No,
again.
I think we were in August, but
was
now
it August?
Here we are.
I guess it was
September.
earlier August. Yeah. Time goes fast,
Yeah.
I guess. Anyway, I'm glad to see that you made it down from the city of Eau Claire today. And what's kind of interesting is you're going to tell us that there's things happening in the legislature, which I'm very happy to hear.
Well, don't get too excited.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But we're making headlines. Let's say that there's a lot going on that's causing some consternation with a lot of people, and maybe some opportunities that we can grasp here. For instance, with child care counts, which the special session that was supposed to happen this week was not just child care counts, but it was workforce development was the general theme of that session. But it's got a little complicated.
Well, we talked about that at length last month. Then I guess, like you say, it was in August, and kind of looking forward to maybe the legislature getting together and talking over some of the governor's priorities. But the talk didn't last very long, I understand.
In my house, it was 21 seconds from the time they gavelled until the time the president walked off the podium. And as I was shouting, they ask if no objection, then they make this motion. And I'm yelling, objection, but they're keeping his head down and ignoring that.
He couldn't hear that, huh?
Right. Oh, he could hear it.
Excuse me.
But that's how sad. I mean, that's the downside of what's happening. Unfortunately, it's not a good way to operate. But in this case, they didn't gavel out. They left the session open. So we are what they call a skeletal session, meaning at any time they could call us back in for this subject. We're not going to get our hopes up, but it's a little different than gaveling out. I mean, maybe there is potential there.
Well, good. I think you have experienced this gavel in and out a few times.
Too many times.
Yeah. You know, I think what's so disappointing is that these programs have some merit. Otherwise, the governor wouldn't be spending time on them.
Yeah.
And then to not at least debate them.
Yeah. So even in the child care side of things, I mean, I think most people, and I think both sides of the aisle, agree that one of the things we've learned from the pandemic was that the access to child care has a great impact on our workforce. And that's why it's part of this workforce development package in the first place. And so one thing that the governor did was put money towards this program called Child Care Counts. It was the federal money that came in during the pandemic and used it that way, which really put a halt on child care centers closing during the pandemic, kept them going, so that a lot of people still had that opportunity. We still lost 25% of them. The other program that came to being and was funded is what was called Partner Up. That is a program, and you talk to any child care center in both of these programs, they will explain to you and tell you how valuable they are, and they've been to them. And this one, though, was partnering with a local business who could become part of that program and help to help that child care center so that they help their business as well, right, and their employees. So it's both of those programs are really, really good, and we should be investing in them, or I should say continue to invest in them. They are ending now because the funding is going away, and the Republicans who have been in charge of the Joint Finance Committee have refused to fund them. Instead, they introduced their own package, which was lower the age to 16 years old for someone who can be in charge of children at a daycare center, and to raise the number of children they can have in the classroom. Those are two really awful ideas that child care centers will tell you makes them tear their hair out. And also showing a little disrespect for what they do. They're teachers, and they're there to get our children ready for the next phase of learning, which is kindergarten through 12th grade. So we need to treat them as professionals, and we need to invest in those programs.
I think the other side of the coin, from the worth of having kids receive preparation for success in school, is the great need for employees out there. And obviously, if a person doesn't have good child care, you're not going to be going to work. And if you're not going to work, then you have another sign out that says employees wanted.
Yeah.
And we have such a shortfall right now all over the country in terms of employees. So it's really a big issue, and we hope it gets resolved to some degree sooner or later here.
It's short-sighted thinking to keep putting this off, and like I said, bottom line is both sides of the aisle, we agree that this is a problem, and this should be a top-tier issue. Unfortunately, since over the last, and we're going to get into the next subject, and I'll try to segue my way into that just by saying that one of the reasons we've gotten into this position is 14 years of a gerrymandered state where politics has become your idea is a bad idea, and we will only go down this path of our idea. And so we're not having compromise, we're not having debate and discussion and considering ideas from both sides of the aisle. That's gone away, and that's unfortunate. And this is a good example of the workforce development package, that we won't even have discussion and to consider different ideas.
Yeah, so there's really a need to respect members of both parties and independents in terms of they having good ideas that need to be debated and come up with a plan that's workable.
And so gerrymandering.
Yeah. So tell us where that's at now. There's legal action pending. There's other discussion in terms of legislation.
Yeah. And I can't, I have nothing to say about the lawsuit. That's out of my hands. But as far as I've been the lead author on redistricting reform in the past, and we've gone through an evolution of starting with what we used to call the Iowa model, and you've been hearing a lot about that because of what we're going to mention here is the Republican have suddenly had an epiphany about this, but we've also learned from that model that there's better ways to build on that to make it a Wisconsin model. Michigan did that, and other states have done that. I'm really interested and intrigued the way Michigan has come through and taken that original Iowa model and built on it and changed some language and fixed some things and put it into the Constitution. And there's a 500-page report that I have in my possession, as well as some others, that are studying how the report is how they came to that conclusion to make it a Michigan model. We need to make something a Wisconsin model. So we'll get around to what's happened recently. Speaker Robin Vos has just made this big announcement out of the blue on a Tuesday, late on a Tuesday, that they were going to introduce the Iowa model. Well, the bill they introduced, I'm going to be very frank with you here, the bill they introduced was 10 years ago. The version and I wasn't actually in the legislature then, but the version that was considered in 2013 that they refused to have a hearing on, because they've never had a hearing on any of the versions, but it's 10 years old and it had a serious flaws in it that actually allows the legislature to abandon the nonpartisan commission report and still draw their own maps. So we've gone away from that the last couple of sessions, but they have chosen to adopt that version in this idea, and they're telling you and the press and everybody that, hey, the Democrats always wanted Iowa model. Why won't they do it now? Well, not only isn't it the model, the version that we want, and that we think needs safeguards in it so that the legislature is not drawing their own maps to satisfy their own needs, but we also want public hearings. We think you should have a voice in this matter. We think you should learn how it works and what would be best for Wisconsin. But they went from a Tuesday afternoon with an announcement to a Thursday vote on the floor of the assembly without skipping through a committee. They didn't assign it to a committee. They didn't have a hearing. They just did this. This is all political gamesmanship and just trying to get a lot of attention.
Just buy some press.
And buy some press.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a desperate grasp for power.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned there's a lawsuit, they see they're really on the losing end of this whole conversation now. Public has finally caught up with the idea that legislators shouldn't be drawing their own districts. There's a lawsuit that has been filed that I think they're going to lose. And so this was a desperate ploy to hang on to power, because even in his, because I went to that press conference late on a Tuesday afternoon, even in his opening remarks, Speaker Voss said, we're hopeful they won't even need to consider this lawsuit if we introduce this legislation.
So in a way, they're hoping that it'll all disappear.
Isn't it obvious to everyone that
Yeah.
they're afraid of this lawsuit?
Well, what's interesting, I think, is that they would talk Iowa plan and yet leave an open door for the party in power to throw out whatever is suggested and come up with their own plan. I mean, that's more than a watered down version.
Yeah, right.
It's a non-version, I think.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
and all of the good government groups have come out with that kind of talk that this is a non-starter. This is not the version or the bill that they want.
Well, and I think the whole idea of the Iowa plan, in theory, was to have a level playing field for both parties.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you, as a Democrat, object to a level playing field.
I, as a person, do not object to a level playing field. I've always felt that if I can't be elected based on ideas
Mm-hmm.
and values and character, then voters should have that option to vote for whom they like. And right now, and I think in our district we kind of do, we're really a 50-50 district, but that is rare. We're one of like 2 or 3 Senate districts in the whole state that are still up for grabs, but not that way the rest of the state.
Well, and I think, as most of our viewers probably know, when any party, either party, gerrymanders, it's set up so that there are safe districts for both party members,
Mm-hmm.
but it also enhances the party in power over the minority party, so that the control remains there. And the nice thing about, maybe this is a foolish thing to say, but when you have a level playing field, you throw out the stinker if you don't want them, and then you bring in somebody else. It makes it easier because there's a balance.
Isn't that what you expect?
Yeah.
And I have repeated it here, and I'll keep repeating it. In the first decade of this century, before the gerrymandering of 2011, out of 5 election cycles, 3 times voters changed majority in the legislature. 3 times out of 5
because they're able
changes.
to.
Yeah,
They're
because you're able to.
Yeah,
Sometimes it is just a over the top kind of thinking that is pressed by ads and stuff, and it isn't always maybe the way you'd like it. But we all kind of have learned, most of us through our life has learned to live with elections that didn't go our way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So but since then, not even close, right? Since then, we've never had a change in majority in either house, and it's even a supermajority in the Senate right now by the Republicans, even though Democrats overall over the statewide elections have come out for Democrats more than Republicans. And so something's wrong with this system.
Yeah. Again, level playing field is important. Now we've talked about two issues that are not totally positive,
but have made headlines and they're on people's minds.
Yeah, and they're important issues. And I guess we hope that everybody thinks about these things and let their legislators know where they stand on them. But I think a key piece of news that has come out of the state capitol is something about Final Five voting, and maybe you should give our viewers an overview of that proposal.
I'll try to make it as simple as I can, because it can be simple. I'm lead author. I was lead author on this last session, but I should say co-author, because I work with organizations that are adamant that we have both Republican and Democrats authoring this bill. And my co-author this time is Jesse James, a Republican out of Altoona, a neighboring district of mine, of course, but last time it was Dale Kuyenga, who is down in southeast Wisconsin, and he's just not in the legislature anymore. And on the assembly side, there's Republican and Democrat co-authors as well. So that said, this is a bill. I just love this legislation because of the reaction I get from anyone from either side of the aisle or philosophies. This eliminates the current way we choose our candidates in primaries. So that's the big change. So in a primary, no matter who's on the ballot, you don't choose either a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot like we do now, or you can only vote on one side or the other in a primary. It would be, you can vote for anyone. So you can cross aisle, but you still would pass only one vote for a candidate in one office. So let's say Congress. You would vote for one candidate in the primary, but it could be that person now whom you really, really like, rather than thinking, well, I have to vote for someone that I think can win. It doesn't have to be that way. Oftentimes, I hear it all the time, I vote for the better of two evils. I hate saying that, but that's what some people think. But you could vote for that independent candidate and make sure that they move forward into the general election, because we call it Final Five, because the top 5 candidates move from the primary to the general. Doesn't matter what party they represent or whomever it may be. You could end up with 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and an independent. You could end up with 3 of one party and 1 of the other party, and could any variation of that in the general election. Now we get to the general election, and we use what we call ranked choice voting. That's what most of us call it anyway. And that means on the five candidates that are left, you rank them. Your first choice, second choice, third choice, so forth. Maybe, of course, by the way, hopefully we have 5 candidates, right, every time. So going to that congressional, say we're still in that congressional race. After the day's done, they tally them up, and nobody has over 50% of the vote. It's spread thin over 5 candidates. You can expect that, right? So the 5th or last place candidate is eliminated, and now you only have 4. But your second choice, if you voted for that person who was eliminated, your second choice gets your vote and moves up. So now again, if you got 4 candidates and you still don't have someone with over 50%, again, the last place one is eliminated. Now you're down to 3, so forth, until we have somebody who gets over 50% of the vote. No longer, by the way, would you have a case of 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, a Green Party, Libertarian, all on the ballot, and someone could get 45% of the vote and win that election simply because they're the top vote getter. They got to earn it. And when you have to earn it, you need to appeal to most voters. And you don't have to be so concerned with that, as we are now in primaries, with the furthest right and furthest left voters who show up in primaries. You need to have a far more pragmatic view, probably, a more satisfactory to more people from both sides or in the middle, who feel confident that this is the person I want to represent me. And we know how this can work. It's worked right now. Alaska adopted it, and they are using that. Maine is using it now. Nevada has passed it through referendum there, and they haven't started using it yet, but it's going to happen in the next year or so. And I think there's other states who are at different stages or levels of adopting this method as well. We have to, of course, adopt it through statutes, and that's why we have this bill. We had a hearing last session, which was a good step in the right direction, and we hope to get another hearing as well and continue to introduce this to people. I'm really excited. I probably don't show how excited I am about this bill, but even on the way here, I was telling Dick, I was listening to the radio, and it's a Friday that we're here sitting here, and the show that I was listening to, a statewide program, was they were going to review the news of the week, and the top news of the week the first one they went to was this bill that was introduced, the final 5 voting, and that makes me really happy too that it's getting attention like that from the media.
Now, going back to the beginning, you and I are running for state senate, we'll say. Now, right now, I don't know, how many signatures do you need on your nomination paper, roughly?
Oh, geez, let me think here. I got to remember, it's like 400 or something.
Yeah. Okay, so anybody who appeared on that ballot has to have the 400 under this plan, basically.
In general, that's fairly easy to get.
Yeah.
Really.
So it'll be the same steps to get on that primary.
Yeah.
But then you're not having to necessarily be a party member, or you could be a party member, a Green or Republican, Democrat, whatever, but you get to appear on there, and you do stand an opportunity to win.
Yeah.
So you're the voters, you and I, when we go to the polls, we have choices that really do count, or they have potential.
That's right. I look at it both ways. Voters and candidates benefit from this. Candidates who don't want to be included in the party are more likely to step up and say, "Hey, finally, I'm gonna run for office, and I don't have to be one of the 2 major parties. I'm going to get on the ballot, and I'm going to have a platform for the things I really care about." For the voters, the same thing as we just explained. I think voters will feel much more free to vote for whom they really, really feel good about.
Well, I know, here in the county level, positions like sheriff, clerk of court, and so forth they're party members, and it really excludes some people. Or you have to join a party you maybe have never been in.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think any of those county offices should be partisan, but that's the way our Constitution was drawn up, 150 years ago. And so we're kind of stuck with that unless we change it. And I have introduced.
But this kind of dilutes that somewhat.
But so currently this bill, I will be honest to tell you that just to get it off the ground, this bill currently is just for federal offices in the state of Wisconsin. So it would be Congress and Senate for the most part. But I would like to expand that into all our state offices as well. But right now we just want to be able to get legislative support, and let's face it, state legislators will more likely be willing to support this if it affects Congress and not them. Right? And I'm just being honest, that's the way you have to think, whatever way we can get something done.
Take things step by step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think once the public uses the system a few times, and I would assume will probably learn to love it.
Yeah.
They would push.
Yeah. Right.
That movement to the lower.
Yeah, and we really think, we see this in persons from Alaska and Maine already, is that once in office, they're more likely to also be more pragmatic again and be more They don't have to feel like they have to really embrace the radical sides of the argument. They can actually work with people.
Yeah, so they're really going to have to appeal to their voters.
Yes.
It's not going to be, and then at the same time, if we eliminate gerrymandering, it's really going to open it up.
Yeah.
To force every candidate to know that they're in a competitive district.
And my favorite story about this is as a candidate in Maine, I think it was, that a voter told this story that they came to my door and I had all these signs in my yard, and the candidate came to my door and I said, yeah, I'm sorry, you see I got your opponent in my yard. And they said, that's okay. Can I have your second place vote?
Yeah.
And that's what a great way that people can start thinking a little differently about these things.
Yeah. So just going back to maybe somewhat summarizing, so under this plan, you could have 20 people running for Congress in one district in the primary. And so when the top 5 vote getters are the ones that will appear in the November election.
Yeah.
And then that's where the rank order goes into play.
That's right.
Or comes into play.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to ask you, earlier you mentioned there has been one hearing. I assume you were at the hearing.
Yes.
What kind of feedback did you get from folks?
It was all positive. And so I would ask you to go to a website, Democracy Found, but you really just have to, has constructed this website, but you just have to Google Final 5 voting. And it's a great website that really explains it well and gives you some insight into it.
That's super. Well, I hope they do have more hearings on this, because I think it needs to get out to the rest of the state. Was that in Madison, the first hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, I would assume that what committee is that?
So I'd be Elections Committee.
Election, and you're on that committee,
I am on
obviously.
that committee. Mm-hmm.
And so it's the committee that decides where they go for hearings.
It's a chairperson who decides everything. But almost all of our hearings, which is, I have no sense getting into the weeds. I did hold hearings outside of Madison that was 15 years ago, but all hearings are in Madison except for the Joint Finance Committee hearings these days, who travel around the state.
Okay, when it comes to the budgeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, folks, thank you for being with us today. I think the key maybe we would like you to take back with you is that we've got positive things happening. Look for information about the Final 5 voting. It's important. Thank you now.